We got started on this topic in my last video, so if you missed that, then be sure to go check it out after you watch this, but now we're finishing things up with part 2 before the playoffs begin on Saturday. Every playoff team this year is unique with their own set of strengths and weaknesses, and none of them are perfectly constructed, so even though some are obviously better than others, there are weaknesses you can exploit with any of them. That's exactly what we've been going over in my last 2 videos. First, running through the teams in the Eastern Conference last time, so today we'll now be going through every playoff team in the Western Conference, and we'll be identifying their biggest issue. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I'd also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. We'll go in order by seed, so to start things off we have the top-seeded Denver Nuggets, and their biggest concern with the playoffs approaching is their defense. Now at first glance they may not be too concerning with the defense overall, as they rank 15th in the league, which is average. Taking a deeper dive, however, exposes some glaring flaws that have been prevalent since a year ago as well. Last season the Nuggets were actually the 15th ranked defense as well in the regular season, but then when the playoffs came around, they finished as the worst playoff defense out of the 16 teams that participated, and it's because of a few key areas that get honed in on when the game slows down and teams can game plan around it. Specifically, the use of pick and roll increases a ton in playoff basketball, and according to Synergy Sports, the Nuggets rank in the bottom 5 of the league defending the roll man in pick and rolls. This is in part because Nikola Jokic is a slow-footed center who struggles defending in space, but it's also because guys like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are subpar perimeter defenders, making life even harder on Jokic to defend the roll man and the ball handler. Next up is the 2-seed Memphis Grizzlies, and their biggest issue going into the playoffs is their half-court offense. The Grizzlies are a young team on the rise that play a fast, fun, up-tempo brand of basketball, which can definitely overwhelm teams, but ultimately the biggest games in the playoffs tend to come down to who can execute down the stretch in crunch time, when things slow down and the pressure rises. The Grizzlies' playstyle can definitely result in some blowouts, don't get me wrong, but that's not sustainable. In the regular season, compared to every other playoff team, the Grizzlies have the worst ranked half-court offense of all 16. If the Heat end up securing the 8th seed tonight in the play-in tournament, then they will be the ones with the worst rank in that category, but if they don't, then Memphis is at the very bottom. Ja Morant has to do a lot of heavy lifting in that regard, but his inconsistencies from 3 make it harder on him, and guys like Jaren Jackson Jr., Dillon Brooks, and Desmond Bane are great in their roles, but they aren't necessarily players who can take shot creation pressure off of Morant's shoulders consistently. Next up is the 3-seed Sacramento Kings, and their biggest issue is also their porous defense. The Kings this season broke the NBA record for the best offensive rating in a season, and that high-powered offense has successfully carried them to their first playoff berth since 2006. What the Kings may have to learn the hard way, though, is that defense wins championships. Again, compared to all 16 playoff teams, the Kings are the worst-ranked defense in the Big Dance this year, as they finished 24th ranked on that end in the regular season, and their game plan is going to have to be to consistently battle it out in high-scoring affairs because they're not built to get many stops. De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, Harrison Barnes, these are the names of important cogs that play their role to perfection on offense, but none of them are very good defenders, and an uptick in minutes for stout perimeter defender Davion Mitchell probably won't be enough to counteract that. Up next is the 4-seed Phoenix Suns, and their biggest issue going into the postseason is their team chemistry. The Suns made the biggest move of the season at the trade deadline when they went out and acquired Kevin Durant, and in many people's eyes, they are the favorite to win the Western Conference because of it. On paper, it makes a ton of sense, because their talent is overwhelming, but they haven't had any time to gel on the court together, and we haven't even seen them play a single game against a playoff-caliber opponent, as currently constructed. Kevin Durant has played just 8 games as a member of the Suns so far, and those games were all against weaker opponents. They did play the Nuggets twice in those games, however, the Nuggets were resting their starters in both of those games, so they basically played the Nuggets B team both times. Championship contenders need to be battle-tested, and they also need to play together long enough to fully be on the same page, and neither of those two things can be said about this Suns team despite their talent. Next is the 5 seed Los Angeles Clippers, and their biggest issue going into the playoffs is their health. The Clippers have had a weird up and down season after being viewed by most as one of the most talented rosters from the jump, and now that the big dance has arrived, they're unfortunately not bringing their best right away. Kawhi Leonard was overly cautious throughout the regular season, resting games regularly in order to preserve himself for moments like this, but now unfortunately his co-star Paul George is dealing with a knee issue that will hold him out of the first few games of the playoffs with no set return identified yet. It also doesn't help that they have to face the Suns in the first round, who I just mentioned might be the most talented team in the conference, so if George misses even half of the series, it could be too little too late by the time he gets back. Next up is the 6 seed Golden State Warriors, and their biggest issue going into the playoffs is their interior scoring. What I'm about to say about the Warriors is not going to be anything that you all haven't heard a million times before, but the Warriors are heavily a jump shooting team that rely on the deep ball to succeed. Their best players all shoot not only a ton of jumpers, but the reason they've been so good for so long is that they make those jumpers, but this season has been far more up and down than prior seasons. Again, compared to all playoff teams, the Warriors score the fewest points in the paint of all of them. Layups and easy buckets don't really come as easy for them as they used to, and obviously, being the defending champions with 4 of the last 8 titles, they've proven that their playstyle works, but this year's team isn't quite as deep as prior versions, so it's something to at least watch out for. And finally, the last playoff team we'll be going over is the 7 seed Los Angeles Lakers, because the play-in tournament still hasn't decided the 8 seeds at this time that I'm making the video, and the Lakers' biggest issue going into the big dance is their spacing. The Lakers team before the trade deadline and the team after the deadline are almost two completely different things, but the one issue that still plagues them to a degree is their perimeter shooting around LeBron and Anthony Davis. Davis isn't really much of a threat from deep, and while LeBron is obviously capable of heating up from the outside, his 3-ball fell at a mark below league average this season, so it's important for the other 3 guys on the court around them to be threats. Still though, most of their rotation is filled with inconsistency here. Austin Reeves has been a pleasant surprise for them this year, and D'Angelo Russell is shooting a career best from deep as well, but besides that, the options are as streaky as it gets. Malik Beasley and Lonnie Walker shoot a lot of threes, but they both shoot about the 36% mark, which is around the league average area. Jared Vanderbilt and Rui Hachimura are both poor shooters, more so needed for defensive purposes, and going back to D'Angelo Russell, he has been disappointing in the playoffs for years, so even though he's shot it well in the regular season this year, he still has yet to prove that it can translate when the lights get brightest. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think these teams should be most concerned with. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.